I think Brandon Marshall might be the biggest coward on the planet, simply because he's on his clout chasing tour. Why at this point in the game you're hopping around podcasts, talking about everybody? It's a bad look.
War, absolute war between the rest of I Am Athlete, which is really just Brandon Marshall, and the Pivot. You heard what Fred Taylor said, the biggest coward in the world. You heard Shannon call this man a bitch and saying you ain't make me and all that other stuff. Ryan Clark didn't say anything too much. He just basically said he ain't corny. But I posted a clip online, basically on my IG page. My IG page today was doing crazy numbers. One of the people that commented was Fred Taylor, and I'm going to read it to you. We talked. I swallowed my pride and called Buddy on my birthday 9 months ago. Tried to be a man about the situation, wish him and his family well blessings. Buddy told me, fuck you, I don't fuck with you, said it's personal. I'm a real open-minded, respectful dude. I had vouched to not speak on it anymore. Buddy kept coming at me in public, lying. What you expect me to do? Now, that wasn't the only instance in here for that. Terrell Owens also saw my reel, put it on his story, and there's a lot of stuff floating around that he calls Brandon Marshall shady. So it wasn't all on Brandon Marshall's side, dumping on him. We did have NFL veteran LeRon McClain, longtime Ravens fullback. He said, Jesus, our Lord and Savior, y'all so bold on a mic. This is not right. Fred, he didn't call you out y'all name. Calling a grown man coward is wild on the internet. Now, I got to side with McClain on this one. That is true. If you haven't seen the interview with Brandon Marshall and Cam Newton, check it out. It's a 2-hour interview, and about the last hour they talk about the breakup and what led up to it. It's true. Like he said some foul shit, but he didn't diss them. He didn't call him out his name. Let me back up. He dissed them, but he did not call anybody out of their name. He just said basically Fred brought nothing to the table all the time. He just wanted to invest and act like he wanted to invest and didn't do it. Then he said he had nothing good to say about Fred Taylor. He did mention Channing's teeth, but he never said that. I never heard him say, hey, I made you. So I don't know kind of where that came from. I'm commented on that in a second, but we're gonna really break this down. He didn't say anything bad about Ryan Clark. He just said he was corny, and when he explained why he called him corny, I understood where he was coming from. Not saying I agree, but I understood where he was coming from, because it's not something you would do when you have business relationships with somebody. All right, let's just get into it. I'm gonna break it all the way down. I always wanted to do a video on this, IAA versus the Pivot, but I didn't, because for the past 2 years, I always thought there would be a lawsuit or something to talk about between I Am Athlete and the Pivot, some of the members of the Pivot. It never really materialized. There's some state court filings out there somewhere. Brandon kind of talked about it. There's a lot of beef off wax with the producer of the show. The producer of season 2, her name is Alicia, from what they're saying. The season that really blew up for I Am Athlete was season 2. That's when they had Rick Ross on there, Deion Sanders, so on and so forth. Reggie Wayne had left the show. It was Chad Ochocinco, Channing, Fred, and Brandon. All right. That was the episode where Brandon looked crazy and he's, screaming at people. But that's when it blew up. And the producer and Brandon apparently got into it about who owns what. And if you go there now, that's what Brandon Marshall said. He can't see season 2 on his platform. And instead of just fighting it out with people and flagging his channel, he's just going to move on for now. That's another legal battle down the road. I want to start with what I think is really important. A lot of the comments on my IG reel today were very, very meaningful. We wish these brothers could get along. Don't worry, I'm gonna get to the bullshit. Trust me, I'm gonna get to the bullshit. But I gotta say this. If those brothers back then had just got on the same page, even now, you gotta see the landscape. The Ringer, the volume, uninterrupted. The Ringer sold for hundreds of millions of dollars. The volume is getting valued at a high hundreds of million dollars value. And they got Club Shay Shay and Club 729 and all that other shit over there. And then you got Uninterrupted. Uninterrupted is looking at a $750 to $1 billion valuation. Now they have LeBron, I get that, but that's still putting in your mind, yo, this content shit is really, really lucrative if you can get the right pieces together and the right team. This is the team that could have got it. They started this shit. Not so much them having a podcast, they're not the first to do that, but an athlete-led show that was impactful on YouTube that people tuned in for. It was damn near appointment YouTube television. It was I Am Athlete. If they had just got along, and not necessarily like each other, but got along, you think about what could have happened. And Brandon talked about they could have got Ryan Clark on board, because that almost happened. They could have got the Sirius radio show, because the Sirius radio show was for Channing. I'm gonna get to that in a second, but my point is they could have owned this space and then had hundreds of $1 million. They didn't have to sell the whole company. They could have sold a big piece. They all got $100 million and doing their own thing and still working. Still could have been on ESPN. Actually, Ryan could take a break from one of his jobs if he had that kind of cachet. All right, let's get to the bullshit. All right, so look, we all know the story. The Channing, Brandon were all at their house or whatever, kids playing with each other, and they decided, Brandon comes up with the idea, hey, I want to do a podcast, would you do it with me? Channing like, shit, I'm in. They're like, man, let's go up the street and talk to Fred. Fred like, man, I'm in, let's do it. Let's go the other way, let's talk to Reggie Wayne. All these guys lived in the same neighborhood in South Florida. That's how it all went down. Now, Brandon said, look, I put up all the money for it. That's true. He asked some people to come in. Those people, they were like, oh, no, we just gonna, just do it with you. It's all good. At that point, you got to understand on Brandon's aspect, and this is what Cam Newton was trying to tell him, you got to understand they didn't see your vision. Not many entrepreneurs can show people their vision before it actually starts. You have to prove it. And then when you prove it, he brought those people back to the table. You got to understand you have an ability to see things people can't necessarily see as an entrepreneur. And he had that ability to make them see that and want to come back to the table. So even though I understand they all balked, they all acted like they wanted to invest, talking about Fred in this particular instance, but he missed meetings. He admitted to that. He missed some things, and he offered to invest. Yes, it just didn't work out. Channing straight up said, nah, bro, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm just paid talent. Cool. So all these guys live in the same neighborhood. They all played in the NFL. They've been knowing each other for years and years and years. And that's why you got to know something happened. Because this relationship stuff, that's when people get on TV and start saying, oh, you're the biggest coward, or you a bitch, you didn't make me, or whatever, da-da-da. And it got all that animosity, all that stuff. And I just read what Fred Taylor said on our IG page. All of that stuff, something had to happen. Now, he's shedding light on what actually did happen between the two. But I think it's more beef because of familiarity. They knew each other. And for Brandon and Channing, this is really deep because it was out of love. Like, there's nothing that will hurt more than somebody you think you care about, or you care about that person and they say something you don't like, and then all of a sudden it's a war of words and it cuts deeper, and you try to match the other person because it's out of love. It ain't hate, because they've known each other for years, and I think that's why it's more deeper and a divide in our community, and we don't want to see it. All right, so back to the bullshit. After the first season, I really don't know what happened with Reggie Wayne. They kind of just say he fell off. He didn't really want to do it. I don't know what's to be true. But what I do know to be true is Brandon did not get on Cam Newton's podcast and lied that whole entire time. I'm sorry, I just can't believe that. He was too in the moment to say everything he was saying was lies. Because I'm sorry, it's just not. It's just not. He was passionate about it. He could have exaggerated some things. He could have been off on some things. But some of those things are absolute fact. Ryan Clark was trying to have a house of athlete in Phoenix. That's what he said. He had been trying to get that and Ryan Clark's podcast on I Am Athlete, and that had been in the works for a year to 2 years. He recounted that so specifically. That's not a lie. And what I didn't like, just going back, because I love The Pivot. The Pivot is my favorite show on YouTube. The first episode, I tuned in. Ryan came in as, I'm an outsider. I don't know their business relationship. I know we're here to move forward. Come to find out, he may not have known their relationship, but he knew they could have worked out on I Am Athlete. He could have been on their platform. And by the way, he was training athletes at the House of Athletes in Florida. So Brandon was like, I didn't even know he was about to go with them and start to pivot until all the news broke. Hell yeah, he gonna move funny with you, Ryan. Like, yeah, bro, like we've been trying to do business for however long. Business deals take time, and then all of a sudden you gonna go with these people who are basically saying they taking the high road and saying we could take episodes down, but now we're gonna go and do our own thing and have ownership from day one. That's on the other side. That's contrasting, man. You can't ride the fence, and especially if that's the way it's gonna be, you could have gave that man a heads up. So there's a fault. So number two, there is fault on both sides. Brandon, you got to understand that these people really helped your brand get to where it is, and IAA to me is a pioneer. It is a fantastic show, legendary just platform, and showing what brothers can do. With that being said, they put in sweat equity, and that's what Cam Newton was trying to get to tell you. Yeah, they changed their mind and wanted to reinvest at the back end, and now you wanted to say, no, the value's higher. Yesterday's price is not today's price. But guess what? They tried, okay? They wanted to, and they were a big part of it. It's not like they were on the outside looking in, watching your podcast grow and not putting nothing in. They were on those flights. They interviewed those people. They asked those questions too. So he needs to understand that. Number three, this is like Brandon's, another thing of Brandon's fault. He should have known what kind of entrepreneur he is. And I'm going to tell you that right now. He may not have been able to articulate it 2-3 years ago when everything went down, but he should be able to now. He is not that type of entrepreneur to have partners. He wants 100% ownership, and that is completely okay, because that's how a lot of business schools teach it. You want to make other people rich or millionaires while you keep 100% ownership and going after the hundreds of millions of dollars. There's nothing wrong with that, because that's how they teach it. And Brandon Marshall does have some schooling as far as business goes. I know he was at Harvard for a little while and other places, but he should be able to admit that. That's the thing. So when they didn't invest on the front end, he was like, fine. Then it blew up, and then he was like, whoa, hold on. This is actually something I put money in, and it's now blown up, and now these people want to come back to the table. All of that shit where he was like, yeah, you got to think about how's an athlete, and you got to think about the live shows, and NASCAR, and radio. We want to do all these things. So the podcast is now up underneath all my companies. That was just a means to move the goalpost. That's all that was. He had no intention on selling. A lot of business owners that want to be 100% independent, they love flirting with the idea of bringing in partners. But when you get to the paper on the table to sign, they're not going to do it. Holla at my boy, shout out, rest in peace, my boy Young Dolph. He was just like that. He sold his content for like $22 million, and he said, you know what? As soon as he about to turn the paper in, he said, hell nah. I gotta stand on it. I gotta stand on business, because that's the type of entrepreneur he is. And I see a lot of similarities in this particular instance, because he's just not there. Those type of entrepreneurs are either gonna sell the whole business or keep it 100% independent. Number four, this is the fault that's on the pivot side. You can't tell me Brandon was not told by probably Cam Newton that y'all are saying names about him, going around bad talking him in different circles. That was readily apparent. Cam was like, yeah, they call you crazy, you're schizophrenic, or whatever the case may be, poking at his mental health, knowing he had mental health conditions. So this is what I'm saying. Something had to change in the 2 years, because every podcast all of them have been not complimentary, but hey, we're taking the high road, we're not going to say no names. This is the first time Brandon was like, nah, I'll put my name on it. I don't have nothing good to say about you. And Cam Newton saying, yeah, they call you crazy. They say you're hard to do business with, but I'm going to try it out with you. They have a joint project. Brandon and Cam have a joint project coming out. We'll see how that goes. But you can't tell me he didn't hear those things, and you're going after that man mental health, and you know his mental health struggles. So we ain't gonna sit up here and say it's all Brandon's fault. I'm sorry, I'm not with that at all. And there was nothing that I know that justified him being such a coward or be called a bitch. Maybe, well, look, let me back up. I don't know about the bitch part, but the coward part, to me, he told y'all to y'all face. There were a lot of admitted podcasts where Fred said, look, I'm not going to be able, like I want to invest. There's a meeting set up. He missed the meeting. A few months go by. He wants to try to do it again. That wasn't on Brandon. That's and then he told you all, look, I went and got a valuation from this company to move the goalpost, but here you go. This is the new price. That's not cowardly. I don't think it's cowardly, man. That's my perspective. Ryan Clark. I really don't understand, again, how you don't understand you have a part in this. Yeah, I get it. You don't want to be called corny and you want to stay out the fray, but you did have a business relationship with this person. And I can understand how he felt a certain way. Shannon, I understand that this man talked to you about his teeth, about your teeth. He may not have been the first person, but he just got that mistaken. I understand that. But we not gonna sit up here and say he said he made you. He didn't make you. He went out and raised money because in his observation, from what he remembered, y'all had a conversation. He said, "Are you gonna invest in the company?" You said, "Nah." He said, "What is it gonna take for you to be, full time with the company?" He said, "Look, give me $250,000 a year." Brandon came back. He said he got the Sirius radio deal because Shannon had 20 years of experience in radio. Came back, got him $400,000 or whatever it was. He bought. And it's like, for Brandon, it's like, bro, wait, I'm giving y'all what y'all need. Y'all asking me to do X, Y, Z, and I'm raising money, I'm raising capital. That could have been your Sirius radio show. They could have had Fred Taylor do NFL draft stuff. He's the man in Jacksonville. He's the man in Florida. He's the man even in New England. He could talk to NFL draft picks or talk to people in college and break down film, do that John Gruden shit. Everybody would have tuned in for that. And then they could have licensed that to ESPN if they wanted it, just like Peyton Manning licenses his content to ESPN with Omaha Productions. They missed out on such a bag because Brandon's like, look, we can do these things. And now he brought it to the table and they're not there. Now, there's just been a lot of personal stuff between the two camps. I want them to not only put it behind them, again, think about what they can do to come together. And even now, if they got a chance to get on the same accord, they are worth so much more together. You all need each other. Y'all need each other. And I'm going to tell you why. Fred Taylor was alluding to, I don't want to see anybody lose millions and be broke. Even B, I'm sorry you basically blah, 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 spent all that money. And now he alluded to him being down on his money. Brandon, on his 2-hour interview with Cam, admitted he has invested $12 million into his company and has not taken any money out of it. He's made sure everybody's gotten paid and is still keeping whatever there in the company. What that tells me is, y'all are operating at a loss, bro. Y'all are operating at a loss. That's why these valuations and why people sell is to split the cost. All right? Y'all are traveling everywhere. Y'all have production people and camera people to pay. I don't know if you're paying your guests, but some guests, like Aaron Rodgers per se, on the Pat McAfee show, require a payment. Now, I think he may have lost $12 million because he hasn't taken any money out, but say he made this $5 million in the House of Athlete business accounts, he's still down $7, bro. You cannot tell me. That just opened my eyes because a lot of these podcasts are not operating on a profit because you need that bigger partner, that bigger sponsor to come in and help offset cost, all right? Heritage Sports.